All right, everybody. How are you doing? Thank you for sharing your evening because it's after 5. So you're sharing your evening with us. And we feel so honored for you to be part of growing our mindset here within the College of Agriculture. And as I was telling our speaker from the first K-State Unite, the College of Ag, the student body president at the time was a College of Ag student, and the vice president was a College of Ag student. And so they said, we want to do something in our college. So Dr. Wiley, what are we going to do? So we got our Ag ambassadors, we got our Ag Student Council, and our manners chapter together. And it was a dream, and now it's a reality. It's our 17th annual. And the students that really started, like Dr. Lonnie Hobbs, who's now assistant professor here in the College of Ag, Michael Dowd, who's now with, he was student body president, and now he is at Cargill, and then Dr. Tiffany Carter, who's at Virginia State. So we're all about success, and it's all about learning how to work together. So I'm Dr. Zia Wiley. I'm the assistant dean in our student and staff support that works through all aspects of the college and well as some aspects of our research efforts. I've been here for 20 plus years, so I do like you. So I really am happy that I'm here. And before I turn it over, I do want to make an announcement. Dr. Hobbs, Ag Econ 420, make sure you sign the back and make sure you sign your name and check the box if you're Ag Econ 420. And even if you're in the Zoom, you got to put it in the chat. And we thank other professors that have really encouraged our students to come to this and really encourage students, even that, for the credit. So everybody is really working together for this. Now, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Dan Moser, who is going to welcome all of us. He's our interim dean in the College of Ag. So everybody applause so we can welcome him here to the stage.
Thank you, Dr. Wiley. I'll be very brief. I just want to say welcome on behalf of the College of Agriculture. Very much appreciate the continuation of what has been a long-running series of distinguished speakers, including tonight, Dr. Steffensmeier, to really continue a dialogue about our society and the workplace and partnerships and leadership and inclusion. And it's really, I think, a very important part of your student experience. Beyond the classes that you take and the things that you're involved in, to interact with each other and to hear from lots of different perspectives about what your future looks like as you go out into the workplace or potentially graduate school or whatever comes next. And it's really our honor to sponsor this with Dr. Wiley and the Student and Staff Success Office, and certainly the student organizations, our exemplary chapter of Manners, Ag Student Council, Ag Ambassadors coming together to work on this. So again, welcome to this event. Kudos to you for taking the time to come here and be part of this. We're very proud to host it.
Thank you, Dr. Moser. So now it's all about our students. So if our students come down here, so it's Manners and our Ag Student Council, Ag Ambassadors, and Max, you're going to take it over, and then y'all are going to go from there. And after that, we'll have Charles to come down and introduce our speaker.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Max Contreras. I am president of our Manners chapter here at Kansas State University. So a little bit about our chapter. We are a professional development club. We do a lot of things that help us to achieve in our professionalism, our academics, and community building. And events like these are key to helping us develop all of these things. So thank you so much for your participation. And we hope to learn a lot this evening from Dr. Steffensmeier. I'm going to pass it over to our other students.
Good evening, everybody, or afternoon. My name is Jill Villa, currently a senior in international ag business with a secondary major in global food systems leadership and a minor in agronomy. I am here representing the Ag Ambassadors.
Good evening, y'all. My name is Mason Springer. I'm originally from Neosho, Kansas. I'm a sophomore in Ag Econ with a minor in animal science. And yeah, we're here with Ag Ambassadors tonight. It's a great leadership opportunity for us students in the College of Ag to be able to engage with future students of the College of Ag and really help them be able to say yes to not just the university, but to our college in specific. And we get to sit in on meetings, get to interact with these new prospective students, get to see why they want to join K-State, why they want to join College of Ag, and we have the opportunity to help them out and really figure out and realize what their goals are in life, what the goals are in this university, so that we can help them be successful when they step on campus whenever they choose to.
Hi, everybody. I'm the last Ag Ambassador. My name is Maddie Drake. I'm from Pratt, Kansas. I'm a senior studying Ag Communications with a minor in Ag Sales. And we also, just last thing, we just selected 30 new Ag Ambassadors yesterday. So we're really excited to welcome them into the group and see what interactions they have with prospective students as we try to grow this wonderful college.
Hey everybody, I'm Creed Caldwell. I'm a sophomore in animal science from the metropolis of Parker, Kansas. I'm here representing College of Ag Student Council. Just want to thank you guys for coming out and hope it's a good time.
My name is Jonathan Stoltz. I'm a sophomore in milling science, and I am the Ag Council rep for the Milling Science Club.
All right, good job. Don't we have great students? Look who they represent. So now we have Charles.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's having an amazing afternoon. My name is Charles Carpenter. I'm a graduate student here in Leadership Studies. I study leadership communication. I'm a first semester PhD student. I recently graduated with my master's in horticulture in the College of Agriculture. I study horticulture with the emphasis on urban food systems. Here, I'm a research assistant in third floor research. So I work under Dr. Steffensmeier doing third floor research. Also, I'm a part of our manners chapter here, so it feels like my worlds are colliding right now. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Tim Steffensmeier. He's the Assistant Vice President for Engagement and Outreach at Kansas State University. In this role, Dr. Steffensmeier leads efforts to build strong and mutually beneficial partnerships with the public and private organizations, advancing K-State's land grant mission to promote economic prosperity and strengthen Kansas communities. He also serves as the professor of communication and leadership in the Staley School of Leadership, where his research centers on community engagement, public deliberation, and leadership. His scholarship and administrative work go together, connecting theory and real-world impact. As the founding director of Third Floor Research at the Kansas Leadership Center, Dr. Steffensmeier has shown a deep commitment to turning academic research into practical tools that help communities thrive. His strong leadership and dedication to advancing engagement across the university and beyond. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tim Steffensmeier.
What a treat. It does feel like things kind of all connect in one circle. And, you know, Charles and I are just starting to get to know each other and bumped into each other a few months ago and now get to do research and stuff together. So, and I think hopefully through the next hour, we'll see lots of connections here. So, as Charles said, my name's Tim and my office is over in Anderson Hall. And what we're trying to do over there right now is deliver as much of this university as possible through student experience, through our research, through our extension system, I'll talk about here in a second, into community. And when I say community, I mean that writ large. It could be like a place like Parker, Kansas. It could be a nonprofit. It could be working to grow a small business. It could look like a kind of movement. Maybe some of you are involved in social kind of movements. So when we say extend this university, we mean we have so many assets and we have so many things that the state of Kansas needs. We should give as much of that into community as possible. And when we do that, the kind of the fancy trope or the word that I'm going to use is called engagement. And that's in my title, so I have to use that word, okay? So That work is called engagement. But I don't want to necessarily talk too much about that. I do want to focus on the sort of the moment we're having, or at least the moment I'm having. I'll see if you're having it too, where it seems like there are a lot of things, a lot of headwinds and a lot of tides and a lot of change. And some of the things that maybe we've relied on as for our stability or for our answers or for our prosperity are getting shaken right now, or maybe reorganized or done away with. And so this conversation when Dr. Wiley reached out about adaptability seems really germane right now. And I want to talk about it a little bit in terms of just what it's like to be a human being and try to stay alive, and how adaptation is a part of who we are as Homo sapien. So just on some broad level, I want to land this as this is something we're equipped to do. And we're also wired in a way to not adapt. Okay, so we're also wired in a way to kind of keep doing whatever we've been doing because that's the most efficient way our brain works. So that's the adaptability piece. The other piece of this title is about what happens in this building. And that is this idea that we are very interested in this notion that lots of people can exercise leadership. It's not a role. It's not something that a couple people do. Okay, so for instance, so Dean Mosier comes down here and says, it's so great on behalf of the College of Agriculture to have you. And in that role, he is providing a little bit of direction for us. And he's creating some order for us. And on some days, my guess is what he does is he keeps people safe. He allows the work of the college to keep happening. And every time he does that, I think it'd be more appropriate to say, Dean Mosier, you are displaying an excellent exercise of authority. Okay, you are doing what good authority figures do. They protect us. They provide some direction. They provide some order, and we need people who do that really, really well, especially deans. Okay, and my guess is that's kind of what he was doing when he introduced to you all and to me. And on other days, though, my guess is in this role, we're asked to do some things beyond our job description, beyond what we have a playbook for, beyond what looks like protecting people, directing people, or ordering people. And in that case, we might say, there's Dean Mosier exercising leadership. Okay, so we want to kind of put our finger on this piece of it. And we'll do a lot of that. And a lot of that work happens in this building. Okay, so I'm not saying anything new to those of you who have taken a class over here or you've read what those pillars say out there, but we're going to talk a little bit about exercising leadership. This is going to be interactive. I do want you to play along and discuss. And let's see if I can. Maybe somebody could help me figure out how to move the slides. As we're figuring that out, I'll just move to this next point. So just real quick to know who's in the room. Who is in the room in your first or second year of undergraduate? Is anybody in their first or second year? Fabulous. Okay, so about a half. Who is in their second or third year of their undergraduate degree, or fourth or fifth? You're still doing your undergraduate degree. Okay, great. And then I'm assuming everybody else is somewhere beyond that. For those of you who are brand new, and maybe you don't even know what you signed yourself up for, I think you made a great choice. And one of the reasons you made a great choice is because I think this university has it figured out. And what I mean by that is it has it figured out that you need these three parts of a stool if you're actually going to get work done in the world, okay? Whether it's agriculture work, whether it's leadership work, whether it's my work in communication, you need these three pieces. This university is doubling down on living up to what we were created to do. And it's simple like this. One hand, we need a lot more new knowledge out there. We call that research. So there's a lot of things we don't know. There's a lot of things about the human brain we don't know. There's a lot of things about how humans interact we don't know. There's a bunch of stuff about regenerative agriculture and growing better commodities we don't know. There's a host of things about leadership we don't know. My colleague here, Kehan Shams, is here running third floor research, and there's a bunch of things about what happens when people learn leadership ideas we don't know. So a university should do that, and my guess is you had some sense of that. The other thing, and this is the thing that most of us are doing, and you probably are studying tonight, or maybe you were in classes today, And that is, we need to disseminate that knowledge, and we call that teaching. So we need a lot of people learning things, and not just people who come to K-State. So we need all kinds of people in our society, in our communities, around our dinner tables, learning more than they know now, and we might call that our teaching mission. Okay, so we produce knowledge, we transfer knowledge. The third piece, and this is the cool piece about being at K-State, and it's not very many places in this country, not at least at its core. As you may have heard, we're this thing called a land-grant university, and that means that we have a purpose that's a little different than any other university in Kansas. And that means that we were established to do what? To extend the knowledge we produced and the information that we transferred through teaching. And we extend that into our communities. And we take that real serious. And so we have this whole system set out in the state called Extension, long history, deep, deep roots with the College of Agriculture. But we also have all kinds of ways to engage. That might look like you doing an internship at a local Kansas business. It might look like taking something you learned in a class and working in a community on that problem, like a housing issue, for instance. So this piece here is the piece that I'm mostly paid to do now, and that is how can we have lots of parts of our campus helping engage. And I'm talking about Kansas, but we all know that a state's borders are just a state's borders. You can't hold people back. Like, we spill out way beyond Kansas. And my guess is many of you have roots way beyond Kansas. So this notion that I'm going to be talking a lot about Kansas, knowing full well, if we do good in Kansas, we will do good well around the world, okay? And we do. So I'm going to be talking Kansas specific, knowing full well our work spills way beyond the borders of Kansas and way beyond some national border like the United States. So this is the university you've found yourself in, and I think it's very applicable to what's needed today around adaptability. Oh, does it work? That'll work. Okay, I'll handle it. Thank you. Okay, so interactive piece. So let's just see. I don't know. I'm making some assumptions that you are like the people I've bumped into, but we'll see if the pattern holds. So for sake of testing this notion around, is it actually in our DNA to be adaptable, I'd like us to go through this exercise. And I don't want you to put a lot of thought into this. What I'd like you to do, especially if you're under the age of 30, maybe just think in the past 5 years. For those of you over the age of 30, and just for fun, I'll be over the age of 30. So for over the age of 30, I'd like you to maybe say the last 10 years. So I'll give you a little bit more wiggle room. And I'd like you to just to start thinking about anything you've changed your mind about, anything, okay? And it can be kind of mundane, like maybe you like apples now and you didn't like apples 4 years ago, put apples. It could be something really profound. Like you used to have this kind of reaction to something and now you have a very different reaction. Some of you might have taken up new activities that you never could have imagined doing. Maybe some artist is now in your playlist and you used to make fun of the person, okay? Or something like that, okay? So the whole terrain of what you've changed your mind about. So not just I learned something new, I want a change of mind, okay? So I used to think this way or do this thing, and now I think or do this thing. And for fun, as we're going along, and you can steal if you want, I'll do the same with you, okay? So I'm gonna just take this out of presentation mode and I'll start typing, and you too. And my guess is in 3, 4, 5 minutes, you might have like 5 of these or 10 of these, and I'll see how far I can go too. Okay, so whatever you can write on, if you don't have anything to write on, you can write on your hand, but just put the things down that you've changed your mind about, and I'm just, in full disclosure, I'll be doing it with you, and if you just want to say, oh, am I kind of on the same page as Tim, you could look up here, but you can't get this one wrong. So anything you've changed your mind about, and I'll be really curious about what shows up on your list, and I'll try to put some down too. We'll go maybe 4-ish minutes. I'll kind of check in a couple times if you need any more time. So anything you've changed your mind about, as long of a list as you want to make, I'm going to try to get 9. How we doing? Who needs more time? And it's okay if you keep going. Anybody need more time? Everybody have a couple? Okay. And again, your list doesn't have to look any like mine. I've done this before, so a couple of these were prompted, but a couple of them I thought about on the way over. A couple of them I just thought about here. Like I've really changed my mind about Anderson Hall. Um, so here's the next step. So we have these up. Maybe you have a list. It's all right as long as you have more than one. And what I'd like you to do now is I want to make a little bit of sense of what these things are and why they happen the way they did. Okay. And I'd like you to unpack that with at least one other person in the room. So at this point, I'm going to have you find somebody in the room. And the only qualification here is it can't be the person you came with. Okay. So if you came with somebody like you're one of these ambassadors, I love what you guys do for the College of Ag, you got to go find somebody else. And here's the thing. It's going to be pretty easy. What you're going to do is you're going to take one of these. Okay, and I'm going to demo this for you, so I'll demo just a little. I'll tell you one of mine through this frame, and then you'll have a frame to have a conversation with somebody. So I want you to just pick one, and you can go as deep as you want, superficial as you want. You know, I could just talk about, well, I used to think yogurt was gross, and now, but I'll talk about one that has more significance than just a preference. And so I'm going to pick one of these from my list. I could pick any of those. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a conversation with my partner, and I'm going to talk about one of the things, and then I'm also going to describe the conditions that led to it. Okay? So here's back to my list, and I'm looking at my list, and maybe the one I want to talk a little bit about is kind of this shift of how to exercise, which led to this kind of yoga practice. Okay? So that's the one I'm going to choose, and I'll demo. And you can imagine you're going to be having a conversation with somebody in the room that you didn't come with, maybe a stranger. It would be really great if it was a stranger. Most work in democracy, most work in communities is stranger work. So get used to strangers. And we're going to describe the conditions that led to the change. Okay? And you don't have to get super into every one of these, who, what, when, where, why, but just let the person, as you're thinking about that, and this is why I'm going to give you some time to think as I'm talking, is think about, well, what led to me changing my mind? What was going on? Okay? And it might look like a little bit like, who was involved? What was happening then? When did it happen? Maybe there's a why. Okay? So about 10 years ago, I was having really kind of debilitating kind of headaches, migraine kind of things. And I was kind of getting over the age where I was really concerned that I was going to be able to continue. And to combat that, I did what I always knew how to do, and that is exercise really, really hard and have a goal, like a running goal or a strength goal or something that I got from some competitive thing that was a part of my life when I grew up in a little rural community in Nebraska and Iowa is where I'm from. And for whatever reason, that wasn't working. And I kind of ignored it, and it kind of got worse and worse and worse. And then I had kind of our last child was born a little bit later in life. And I remember sitting around, and I'm about in the middle of my 40s now, and I'm looking across at her, and I start to think like, man, I'd really like to be around when she grows up, you know, and I don't know if I'm going to make it, you know, like I don't know if I'm going to make it. So I'm just describing a little of the conditions. So I got these terrible headaches. I got this little 5-year-old, and I'm thinking, you know, I'm not the youngest anymore, but I'd really like to be around, like, you know, when she goes to college someday, or even later. And I'd really like to be active. Like I'd like to be like hanging out and doing fun stuff with her. And then the what? It's a couple months before the pandemic. I didn't know the pandemic was coming. And my wife and I took this escape trip to some bougie place down in the Caribbean. And I wake up the first morning there, and I see that they have this studio. I knew nothing about what was going on there. I'd never really taken anything connected to thinking any other way to use my body than what I was taught in sports in this rural community and how to work out and things like that. And I went to what was a yoga session. I had no clue what I was going to. I thought it was like stretching or something. I go to this thing, and from down in and it was a woman from the Yucatan Peninsula. and she's doing this vinyasa class. All these words I know nothing of at the time. And I go to this thing and I don't know what's going on. And it's going on for about an hour and I'm in trouble. Like I'm sweating, I'm dying, I'm hurting, but something's right. And I'd never really paid attention to my breathing, et cetera. So I'm in that, I go back to the hotel, to the little place where stays in the little bougie place, and tell my wife, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I just did, but you should come with me tomorrow. So the next day I go back and she comes with me and she goes, she didn't like it as much as I did. So third day I go back by myself. Okay, we leave the place. I never thought much of it. I didn't come back. I wasn't going to practice, but I was like, whatever that was, I need more of it. And then a couple months later, the pandemic hits. And for about 2 to 4 weeks of the pandemic, I tried the whole like going to Taco Lucha and buying a bag of margaritas to deal with my stress and anxiety about the world being. And that sort of works, but it doesn't really work the next morning. And it's not very sustainable at the age I'm at. And somehow, and I don't remember exactly, something kind of shows up on my feed and I find somebody that's doing yoga, a very trendy person on the thing. And I was like, well, I'm falling apart and I can't be drinking more margaritas. So I just went in my living room and I didn't even have a mat at the time and I tried it. I was like, huh, this is kind of what that person from the Yucatan Peninsula was doing. And fast forward, and now it's like an everyday thing, and it's I don't think there's a better part of the day. So you can imagine. So I just gave you a who, what, when, kind of where story of something I'd never imagined doing. It wasn't necessarily my goal, but as I look back, it makes the case for adaptation, and that's sort of what I want you to start unpacking here. Okay? And you don't have to do it in any careful way, and you can go as deep or not deep as you want, but I want you to have a conversation with somebody and say, you know what? I now think this, and I used to think this. What's the who, what, when, where, why? Okay? And it doesn't have to be super eloquent. It can be kind of clunky. Any questions? Okay, go. At about 4 minutes, I'm going to say stop and ask you to switch to the next person. So just keep talking at least for 4 minutes. If you're the listener, you may say like, "Oh, I don't know what your why is. Why'd you do that?" Or who else was involved. So you might have to prompt the person a little bit to kind of get it out of them. Okay. Okay. Why'd you change your mind? Okay. If you haven't switched already, or if you just need to wrap up that person, then flip if you haven't already. What have you changed your mind about? Okay. Oh yeah, I'm gonna interrupt. So I'm curious what you were talking about, and I'd really love if somebody just kind of briefly said, "Hey, here's one thing I changed my mind about," and then give us one of the reasons. Okay, so it could have been a who, it could have been a what or a why, but just let's throw some in the room. And what I'm curious about is like, are there any patterns? Like, is there anything in all these individual expressions of changing mind that would help us kind of make some sense of like why or how adaptation's possible for us as people and community and states and nations. So somebody throw one out. Tell me why you changed your mind or what was it, and then one thing about it. And I'm going to have you speak in the mic because we have about 30 folks on Zoom that I would love to make sure they hear you. And I hope if you're on Zoom, you've been going through this exercise with somebody, or at least the other person in your head. You could talk to them. Okay, who wants to say? Where? Yeah, Max. I love the fact that I have Max. I have a son, Max. He's a freshman here at K-State.
All right, so I used to hate beans, which is a heavy, like just any kind of beans.
Fava beans.
Well, okay, I should be leguminous beans, so like pinto beans. I hated refried beans, like any kind of bean. I didn't like it. And as soon as I moved away from home and I came here to school, I was like, oh, my family won't be here to make fun of me for not liking beans. Let me eat a bean. And I was like, these aren't that bad. And so I've just been eating beans ever since.
Okay. Okay. So just as you listen in, and now we're trained a little, here's Max and he's saying, okay, there was this shift in my life. So something changed in him. He moved away from college, he moved away from home, and who knows why, all of a sudden his palate lights up for beans. Right? And great. Okay. So just put that in the bucket of something big shifting in Max's life, and all of a sudden he likes this thing that, he didn't like. Keep going. Perfect. Thanks for being the first to volunteer. Let's get at least maybe 3, 4, 5 of these.
Okay, so my name is Traya. One of the things that I changed my mind about was going out to eat alone. I used to think that if you were a person that got a table for one, that you were really lonely, you just didn't have any friends in your life. Until I did a lot of traveling alone, and that was because I had to. And I just decided one day, like, let me just go out to eat. Like, I want to get out of the house, go get some food and just debrief from my day. And I tried it. And I know that now you're not a lonely person if you go out to eat for a table of one. I now view that as like self-care. So I do that regularly now.
I was just in a conversation with somebody. We were out in Roanoke, Virginia, talking about engagement, and she was citing some statistic that it's the largest growing group in restaurants, people eating as ones. And I had a lot of interpretations about that, and they weren't healthy. So I love the fact that you just gave a great example of how it's working for you for self-care. Thanks. Couple more. So why'd you change your mind? Thank you. And then somebody from this world has to speak next. Say your name and whatever.
Hey y'all, how y'all doing? My name is Amaya, and one thing that I couldn't stand was flying. I used to hate getting on the plane, but now y'all, I feel like it's the best thing in the world. I feel like I should buy me a plane just so I can just fly everywhere. It's just like it's so convenient. I could just get in and get to Mississippi in 2 minutes. Like, but yeah, that's the thing. I used to hate flying, but now I like flying.
What is it about now that you like flying? Like what was happening? Did you fly with somebody real fun?
So many planes falling out the sky. It was like at that time when I was like starting to like get into it, I was like, okay, now I see too many planes starting to fly out the sky. Like, what's going on? And then I started having to fly more, and I was like, okay, it's not that bad. So now I love it. So now I wish I had an airplane every day.
One, did you know K-State has a plane now? We like, hey, it's over in Salina. You should try to get on it. It's like a K-State plane. Yeah, like K-State logo, whole deal. I know people in Anderson Hall that can get on it, so I'll let you know mine. I'll be like, I just met somebody who loves planes, so we'll get you on the K-State plane. But You know, there's probably something there. And I also like this idea of, it was a little bit in my story too, like the reps. Like I started doing it, you know, so you probably had to do it more than once for it to hold. So this reps, and then I wonder if there's something too about like, maybe there weren't that many planes falling from the sky. So maybe you got some new data, maybe, you know, whatever scared you when you were little. So I like this idea that maybe there was some new information, or maybe some people around you said, oh, I fly all the time. And then I like this reps thing. Like you got to put in reps often, and that might be part of your story too. Like I just started doing, I didn't even want to do it. I just started doing it. And then one day I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I like it. That's my Taylor Swift story. Oh my gosh, it was just playing all the time because of some other people that I raised. And then one day I was like, this is pretty good. I kind of like it. I just listened to the whole album, the one that she curates, the one that just dropped. Pretty good stuff. Pretty good stuff. And I didn't intentional that, but there was a bunch of reps. Okay, somebody over here, please.
Good evening, Jill again. For me, it was definitely kind of a shift into where I wanted to work. I thought I wanted to work for a local co-op, stay within small ag, but I ended up somehow getting a job with PepsiCo and working in big ag. First, I thought I was applying for a scholarship. It was through this program. I got an email. And then the next thing I know, I got a PepsiCo email being like, hey, when do you want to interview? And I'm like, interview? What? But worked with them for 2 years now, and I just loved what they're doing and kind of the support that they're having. And I still get to work with co-ops in some way, shape, or form, which is really neat. Jill.
And was there something about the Pepsi experience that made you think, you know, this isn't the stereotype I thought, or this actually lines up with my values?
Well, I think the big thing is I'm from California, Los Angeles, the big old city. So I always thought that I don't want to go back to the city, and if I wanted to make a change in ag, I'd have to start small. But I feel like it's having people like me in those big spaces that truly does make the difference, and having a company that really listens to you too, and people that you surround yourself that will listen to your passions, I think is really important, and I can see myself growing.
I want to hold up something that Jill just said there that I think is a piece of this adaptation. So when we talk about adaptation and leadership, we're actually talking about something that's pretty conservative. So, and what I mean by that is we're talking about things that kind of move slow. And we're talking about the changes that are at like the 3 to 5% level, not the 95% level. And so what I liked about Jill's story, she didn't say, oh, I started working for Pepsi and everything changed in my life. I heard I had this set of values, and I found out that they could be played out or lived out in this other company, and who knew? And I thought I was going to have to go to some small rural place, and I can find myself in this big multinational company. So this notion of like, this conversation here is a lot about the small modifications that happen for humans, the life world itself, to sort of better align with both opportunities and push back against threats. So adaptation is inherently conservative in terms of how it happens kind of as our species. I think it's also inherently conservative, and by conservative I just mean smaller incremental changes, and I don't mean we have to wait 100 years for something good to happen, particularly in systems of oppression or where there's violence at play. Small little changes, particularly from lots of individuals, can lead to really significant movement in a community, in a family, in a culture, okay? So this notion of adaptation, I want to put up something here and see if it lines up with the conversation you were having. So you might think about this conversation you were having, and I wonder if any parts of this ring true to you. So if I was to say a formula or so of what makes adaptation, you might think of it like this. When we are primed, when adaptation typically happens, there's some internal pressure. You might remember the story I told about my own health, okay? And just feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to work the way I want. I'm not gonna be able to be around for this child that is in my house. And so there's this internal pressure. And that pressure often shows up as, it's causing you to be kind of in disequilibrium. Another fancy word that our psychology friends use is dissonance. like a lot of cognitive dissonance. It could be like pressure at some physical level. It could be the pressure that my values aren't aligned. So you think about that internal pressure, something in you is just not right, okay? And that might manifest itself in a lot of ways. The story I told, it was mostly through physiological. It was my own body saying, you gotta learn how to do something different, and just running super hard is not probably the way to stay fit anymore, because you keep getting hurt and it gives you more headaches. So internal pressure. And you might think in your story, was there something internal putting pressure on me to, quote, change my mind or behavior? The second piece of that equation, that formula, and we can study this for those of you who are social scientists or like to lay out variables, we could study aspects of this. The third part is external pressures. So it's typically internal, but then something external. And you might remember my little story of I got a dose of this because we went somewhere afar, but then it was really this external pandemic. And as I've been doing a similar exercise in a lot of companies and organizations around the country, a lot of change of mind and behavior happened during the pandemic. And you'll hear people tell stories for a variety of reasons, okay? So maybe in your story, maybe it wasn't exactly like this, but when you think about times when you've changed your mind or changed your behavior, as maybe you fast forward your life, my hunch is those times when it happened, even if you didn't know it was going to happen, it's an internal pressure and there's also something external. And when those things line up, our species is kind of primed to make a move, to make a change, okay? And I want to give you one more piece of it. The other thing that we found through research is that the other thing that really sort of primes the pump. So if you're trying to make changes in your own life, or you're trying to make changes on a team you work on, or you're trying to make this university hum, thank you for those of you who are ambassadors of the College of Ag and the Council and the Manners program. If you're trying to make things better in our learning environment, the other real nice piece, okay, you don't have to have all three of these to make changes, but when they line up, they tend to lead to more adaptation than not, is it lines up with an aspiration. Okay, so there was something in that story I was telling you about, you know what, it'd be really great if I could make it to 80 and my body still kind of worked, because then I'd be able to see almost all the high points of my youngest daughter's life. Okay, so something in there really lined up and I was on that mat every day. Okay, so internal pressure, external pressures, and aspirations. And when those things line up for individuals or teams or communities, or in some cases a whole nation, you can make a lot of change. Okay? So I want to just pause a second. Anybody have a comment or a question or something that popped in your head as I sort of laid out an equation of sorts, kind of a formula, and we could test it with research because that's what we do here at a university, particularly people who do social science work, and that sort of equals adaptation. And I'm not suggesting every time this happens, people change their mind or change their pattern, but it gives us a pretty good chance, okay? And if you're thinking about the spaces you're in, if you're trying to create change, you might be thinking of ways that you can pull these levers. What's an internal pressure that people are feeling that I could help facilitate change through? What's happening in the world right now that we could put a spotlight on to say, you know what, that thing that's coming right now, that's the thing we should put our eye on, and we should pivot because of it. And then you can tie to people's sense of their aspirations or their purpose. And if you do that, at the individual level, maybe the people around your dinner table, maybe the people you work with, you have a chance at, quote, adapting in a way that lets you meet the opportunity, seize it, or deal with a really big, nasty threat, okay? Something that's coming at you, a problem, maybe a crisis. Any comments or questions at that before I move on? I want this to be just a full group, and we won't take too long here, but I just want a little bit of sense of what you think either keeps people in place, how we get stuck, or why we resist change. Okay, so just think about, because so I just gave the equation for actually making change. Now I want you to think a little bit about why most of us don't change and why it's really hard. It's really hard to make change in a college of agriculture. It's really hard to make change in a community. It's really hard to make change, frankly, at anything I say I'm going to change on New Year's, the day after New Year's. Okay? Because I say a lot of things, and by February, I'm doing a little of them. By March, I don't even remember. Okay? So why? So even though it's kind of in us, we have the capacity to adapt. Human beings are really resilient. Why don't we? That's what I'm asking. And you don't have to back it up with science. You don't have to know. But my hunch is you've lived long enough. You know why it is that humans get stuck or we stay in place. What are a couple of your hunches? Yeah, please. Grab the mic.
Uh, lack of, I lost your thought. Basically, we're motivated by comfort a lot of the time, or pride, and change can kind of cause fluctuations in both of those.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So just this notion that I like to be comfortable. I don't know about you. Physiologically, our body would rather be at rest or disequilibrium than, or equilibrium than disequilibrium. Okay. So we like being comfortable. I sure do. What else?
I think that it's kind of the same equation that you just showed us, but reversed. Like, we also have other internal pressures that make us not want to do that. We also have other external pressures that make me feel like not safe to do that, that kind of thing. And so I think that it's kind of those two types of pressures kind of pushing up against each other.
So even the one, right, you just named, like this, the other, this, so there's also pressures that work in reverse. And one of them is I don't feel like it's even safe enough to try anything, right? Because I'm back to protective mode. You know, I'm back to hoping the dean protects me. Like I couldn't, you know, going back to the authority role. So I really like this notion of like we're wired for self-protection, and self-protection is not about adaptation. Self-protection is doing anything I can to kind of keep alive, and I mean that literally and as a metaphor. So really nice. I think there's something there around. We're also designed to stay alive and to self-protect, self-protect, self-protect. Okay, to kind of keep our head down, make sure I'm not getting exposed. Keep going. What are your other hunches? Why is it kind of so hard? Why do we get stuck?
Because it's the way we've always done things, and so like people just want to stick to the habit of just doing things the way it was.
Yeah. And what's your hunch? We're smart people, right? We know. So what is it about we've always done it that way?
Well, it's worked for like this long, you know, or whatever. Like it may not technically work for everybody, but it'll work for like this group of people. And they're like, well, it's fine for me or whatever. And like they don't see that some other people like need this change or whatever.
So I like this idea of we've always done it that way. My colleague in third floor research that Charles works for studies a lot around human behavior and why it's so difficult. And this idea that, you know, our brains want to do the least amount of work as possible, and they love habits and they love patterns. And I also like this notion that when we feel the case for adaptation, it might not be felt by everybody. Somebody is being served quite well by the status quo, or they feel like they're being. So we got two things kind of working against us: our habits, and then this idea that adaptation and the timing and the ripeness for that might not be equally distributed. Okay, so on one hand, you all proved it, because I bet there was a bunch of things on your list. We have the capacity to change our mind and change our behaviors, and we're doing it all the time. And in so many ways that we need to be doing it, we find ourselves either stuck, we find ourselves resisting change in place. I'll even make it a little hotter. Even the things that might not be serving us in the status quo, we perpetuate them. Even some of the things you complain about, or some of the things that are frankly hurting you, we tend to perpetuate them. So another equation, and this is the second one and the last one I'm going to give you tonight, is this one. When you meet resistance in yourself, or when you meet resistance when you're trying to usher in change, it's not, and you've probably heard this, it's not that people resist change. You're down for change every time it benefits you. You walk in here, I say, hey, when you walk out, you're going to have $2,000 more than you walked in. My guess is everybody's up for that one. Everybody's down for change when it's on your terms. And when I mean on your terms, when you don't feel like you have to give anything up. But adaptation is inherently a process of giving something up to go a little bit forward. It's not win-win. I have to give up a way of thinking about exercise in order to go forward with something that allows my body to be a bit healthier. Okay? And that's the difficult part of adaptation. And in systems, when you see resistance and when the resistance is huge, what you might start to think of yourself as resistance is, oh, that means for somebody or lots of people, the loss they think we're going to incur if we move forward is greater than the purpose of the change. And that's when people stay stuck, stop, or full on resist. So we're quickly doing this equation. Am I going to have to give up anything? Might I lose something? Including something really deep, like one's sense of who they are, or their identity, or their culture. So as you see resistance, maybe even in your own self, you might start poking around and saying, the resistance isn't because people don't like change. The resistance is because most of us don't want to lose something, or we're afraid of losing something. And usually it's something really big we think we're going to lose. I'm going to lose my job, or I'm going to lose all my friends, or I'm going to lose my capacity to ever be in love again. And we kind of tell ourselves that story, and it kind of holds us in place. That's kind of depressing, because this is more of the status quo. And this goes back to, we're pretty buttoned up as people most of the time, and we are looking around and scanning the environment and self-protecting all the time. Even maybe when you stepped into this room today, particularly if this is not a comfortable room for you, or you've never been here before. So on one hand, we have the capacity to adapt, and it's what makes, I think, being human so wonderful and perplexing and challenging. On the other hand, we have a lot of things working against us, including not a big stomach for loss or the perception of loss. So if resistance is loss and purpose, then what do we have left? And I think what we can lean on, in part, because there's probably not anybody out there going to save you, and there's probably not an authority figure that can direct and protect and order you enough for you to adapt, that this is when you get into the domain of exercising leadership, okay? That's the muscle, that's the capacity, and I love the fact that this is a 17th biannual mindset, growing mindset, growth mindset. That's what this is about. And we're going to use the word leadership then to stand in for a kind of disposition, a kind of way of going at the fact that on one hand, we have the capacity to adapt. On the other hand, there's so much working against you making any change, even at the individual level, okay? And that's mostly wrapped up in this equation that we start to resist when loss is greater than the thing we said we were going to do the day after New Year's Eve. Okay? So what do we have access to? One of the things, is not the only thing, is we can build our capacity to do this thing called exercising leadership, which means doing the sort of thing beyond our job, beyond our role, and beyond the thing that we're good at. Okay? And when we do those things, we'll say, you know what? That's what it looks like to exercise leadership. And a lot of the ideas taught in this building hinge on this. So I want to give one quick thing here. So to exercise leadership, and the only time you would ever do it, the only time you wouldn't just protect and direct and order people, or find somebody who knows the answer, or go read the manual, the only time you would do that is when you had a really big and good purpose. And one way to think about purpose is the thing that you have often the most in common with the people you're working with. So what this triangle shows is that if you want to meet with the least amount of resistance, huddle people together around the big thing you agree on. We can all agree that we love K-State. We can all agree it's a great place to learn. We can all agree we should produce knowledge. We can all agree that we should extend it to communities, okay? I can talk about that, and I talk about it a lot. And for the most part, people say, that's great. I want to work or study at a place like that. So that's up there. But about the time then we say, well, but how do we make K-State a little bit better? What strategy should we use to do more engagement or do more research? Then a few people start to say, oh, that's not my strategy. That's the wrong one. We shouldn't take that strategy. So what's happening in this triangle is the resistance is happening the further you get in the weeds. And then about the time we try to figure out the tactics, we should do it by investing double the money we currently invest in the College of Agriculture, right? Yeah, a lot of people in this room would agree. Sounds good. Dan agrees. I think that's a pretty good idea. And then what happens? College of Arts and Science is a little fried, okay? Because we don't have double the amount of revenue. So it's the tactic place where you start to get a lot of resistance. And the reason I put this up here is because leadership ultimately starts with purpose. And I would, if you remember nothing else from tonight, know that purpose is the way that you can work yourself back up to get a little bit more agreement and a little bit more alignment. So about the time it feels like you and I are divided, and we might even be enemies, and we start to think of ourselves that way, it might be helpful for you or somebody around us to remind us that, you know what, at the top of that pie, we're pretty aligned. And go up and hang out there for a while, and then you can get back down in the weeds and negotiate the tactic. So this is, I think of this as almost like a conflict mediation tool. You could think of it as a way in your own sense, like when you forget and you kind of fall off the change you wanted to make happen, go back up and remind yourself about purpose, and then work back through the strategy, and maybe you try a different tactic. So again, got to have purpose, or you shouldn't exercise leadership because it's disruptive. And as you try to execute on your purpose, you're probably going to meet more and more resistance as you go down the triangle, as you get into the who, what, where, when, how, which is the tactic. One more thing, and then we'll kind of wrap up. I know it's a lot of exams this week probably, and I don't know about you, but this is the time of night that I like to eat. And I really appreciate people coming. And for those of you online, I hope I get to see some of you, especially those in the extension system, next week at the conference. So the last takeaway here then is this muscle, this leadership muscle. And I was saying it was a little bit different than the muscle that protects people and directs people and orders people. And we're using that word leadership intentionally because we're not talking about a leader or a position. We're talking about a way people show up to the world. To do what? To make adaptation happen. That's what leadership's about. So the exercise of leadership is about adaptation. And I don't know about you, but in 2025, it feels like everybody needs a couple doses of that. You know, we need, especially those of you who are the under the 30 age group, the one I said, think back to the last 5 years and not 10 years. Like we need all of this from y'all. We need so much experimentation right now. We need people figuring it out all across the disciplines. We certainly need people figuring out in terms of how humans relate to one another. And frankly, at the individual level, I think we need to reorient people to a purpose they can feel really proud and stable, despite all the change that might be happening around them. So this notion, when we say exercise leadership, we're talking about all the behaviors that you would use to do what? Learn new things, grab new behaviors, try new interactions, okay? To do what? Make things just a little bit better, a little bit less violent, a little bit more prosperous, okay? So everybody can share in it and not just the dominant group. So the exercise leadership is an invitation to say, to build those muscles. I have two more things. One, and I had to say it because Kahan is here and I just wanted him to still like me. So there's a lot of words on here, and don't worry about everything on the slide, but I wanted to say that this university, a bunch of people that work at this university, the people at the state of Kansas are doing something that's unique to the United States, unique to people across the world. We're trying to make sense of if we're going to make a really big impact on the really big issues, okay? Like how we grow our food and how we recruit a whole new generation of people into the new ag innovation building that's going to open maybe next year. So that what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to have impact on all four levels. And this research center that my introductee was talking about is trying to figure out how we build individual capacity, how we build that capacity at the organizational level, what actually shifts when we start to have a lot of people huddle around a challenge, and then ultimately how we build more civic and cultural capacity. So I didn't want to leave here today without emphasizing building a leadership muscle is not an individual endeavor. We need to do it at the organizational level. We need to study what happens when we look at challenges that way. And then ultimately it's a cultural thing. And what's cool about K-State is we have people doing that. And we have people going out around the world telling that story. And a lot of people coming to Kansas to learn how to do that. And that's one of the areas we lead in. It's been a really great journey. And Charles is just at the beginning of that on his PhD. And we're looking forward to some amazing dissertation he writes someday that contributes. And my guess is, I mean, Charles, you can write your dissertation on anything, but man, it'd be great if you wrote on one of those 4 buckets, you know? So Charles might say, oh, I'm gonna study this one challenge. Charles cares a lot about horticulture and how we grow things, et cetera, and how it's an extension. He may wanna study like what actually shifts in a challenge when a bunch of people start to do leadership development around it. That'd be a great dissertation, Charles. Maybe. So I just wanted you to know, I wanted to come full circle and say, we're doing a lot of cool things at K-State. We're teaching individuals. We're trying to build capacity in organizations and companies. And we're definitely curious about what changes in a challenge when people start to exercise leadership. Last thing, and then we're done here. I just wanted to give a little bit of advice. If I was to say 3 simple things, and you may have heard these before, these are from our partner at the Kansas Leadership Center. They have a yellow book now that are about these ideas. And I buy into this. We've studied it. I believe it. I try to practice it. There are 3 things everybody in this room can do, like from the time you walk out of here, to help more adaptation happen, to exercise leadership. One of them is just start asking more open-ended, curious questions. Okay? Gather as much data as you can. Don't go in with your opinion. Don't assume you know. Just start asking a lot more open-ended questions in the conversations you're in. And I mean the conversations at your dinner table or your Chipotle table or wherever you dine with people, even, I suppose, if you're alone. Also, you might ask open-ended questions in your classrooms or in your workplaces. And that would be a leadership muscle. If we had more people asking open-ended questions instead of stating their opinions, I think we'd make more progress. We'd be much more curious about each other, especially those of us who are trying to do the hard work of living with people who aren't like us. Okay? So this long work we're trying to do. You know, this democracy is the longest standing one. And democracy comes from the words, it's 2 Greek words. It's demos and kratia. Demos means people. Kratia means power of and by. So democracy is fundamentally about the power of the people. And you know, we have a document in this country that starts off called We the People. And if you think of like what's hard about that, what's hard about sharing power with people who don't have the same values or life experiences or language or religion or spirituality, we're it. There's no longer experiment. No group of humans has pulled it off longer than we are. And we're not good or perfect at it yet, but we're getting better. At least I hope we are. And so this exercise leadership stuff, if you want to think of it in the biggest picture, it's fundamentally about how we help people live together and share power and become more prosperous and healthy. So open-ended questions, last 2. Instead of maybe just offering your opinion, maybe you have another interpretation. And here's how that might work. I have one interpretation about Taylor Swift's music. Okay? Then I might say to myself, well, what's another interpretation? And that interpretation I may not even hold. It just might be helpful to say out loud with a group of people. And then that second interpretation is usually the opposite of the one I have. So then you might need like a third interpretation, okay, about Taylor Swift's music. And then all of a sudden that third interpretation opens up my eyes. And I'm like a Swiftie now. I needed the third interpretation, okay? Because my first one wasn't very good. My second one was just the opposite. So this notion of instead of asking people to talk about through their opinion, you might ask people to make interpretations of what might be going on. And when we make a lot of interpretations about what might be going on, we have more paths forward. Last thing, and then we're done, is I think the other thing we can all do, and this goes back to, I think, to the self-protection and the safety thing, is we can make leadership less risky for others. So we could do it together. Some of you have formal power in your roles, and you could actually partner with people so they could make more interpretations, or they could ask harder questions, or they could bring data that people don't want to see or hear. So this notion that I think we all have an ethical responsibility to help another person do what? Adapt a little. So you can make it a little less risky for somebody to try something. My hunch is most of us need other people to pull this off. We can't do it alone. The parts of the story that I gave was not just me deciding to do that. It was connected to my family. I ended up connecting to a community of people who were practicing that same exercise, and it led to change. Okay, so this third one is, it's not a thing you do by yourself. Don't do it alone, and try to make it a little less risky for others. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and your attentiveness. I hope you think more about the things you've changed your mind about, and ultimately understand that this is all within our capacity. You have to be super smart. You don't have to have a position. You don't have to be privileged to build this leadership muscle. And I hope it's something you think about exercising more of. And I really appreciate Dr. Wiley. Where's Dr. Wiley at? Thank you. Really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak tonight and all the good work you do at K-State. And I'm sure you're responsible for most of the people being here. And for those of you who joined at Zoom, wherever you are, appreciate that too. So thank you all.